Hi, I'm Jenny Kanoki, and this is my Module 3 in the interviews that I conducted. So the three people that I interviewed are obviously my principal, Mr. San Romani. He is a first-year principal this year, so he is new to Fairfield and new to the job in general. So he had some really interesting perspectives because he is so new, but he also grew up with his mom being a special education teacher for 30 years. And so some of his points of views were from him being a child and listening to her talk about things, and then also what he has experienced as a principal, our special education teacher, and then one of our paraprofessionals. So the child find procedures, our principal told me some things that I didn't know that we did in our preschool. We use Brigance and my IGDIS, and then the county also provides free screenings. And so throughout those screenings, it's just things like, their cognitive and mental abilities, what they know. Do they know their letters and their numbers? What are their fine and gross motor skills? Things like what are their social and emotional needs, or do they have any physical needs as well? And then our special education teacher and paraprofessionals said similar things about once the kids get into school, we have STAR and DIBELS testing that we do quarterly and then semesterly that helps teachers, make judgment about whether kids are actually making progress or not. And then the special ed teacher also pointed out that we have SIT teams, and so that stands for student intervention teams, that teachers can fill out paperwork if they are seeing something that they think would be problematic. For example, I filled out one last year on a student that I wondered if he was dyslexic, and so I put it in his file so future teachers will see it, and then once he gets a little bit older, if the problem is not resolved, then they can decide if he qualifies for an IEP. What is the most challenging part of your role? All three of them kind of said the same things about if they don't feel like the parents are supporting them, because that just makes it really frustrating when you're working really hard with a kid at school, and if they're going home and they're hearing that it's not important for them to do that, or they don't need to be reading or working on whatever their area of struggle is, it's hard to combat with that when it comes to not having parental support. Our principal has some frustrations with our co-op because, as I have explained in a previous presentation, Fairfield is completely out in the country, and so he feels like sometimes Fairfield just gets swept under the rug because we're not a big school in a bigger city. Our special education teacher said that one of her least favorite parts of the job is scheduling. She hates scheduling, all the meetings and sometimes rescheduling the meetings, and then finding time for when the pairs can be in the classroom and then when it's time to pull kids out. And then one of the things that the paraprofessional said that I just found really interesting was not having your own classroom, not having a place where you necessarily, belong, where you can go sometimes and just close the door and turn the lights off and just have a moment to yourself to breathe. What is the most rewarding part of your job when dealing with stakeholders? So obviously all of them said the same thing about, it's just awesome to see kids hit that goal and to achieve something. Some other things that the principal said was that he's been really pleased this year with the lady that we work with through our co-op, that she has demanded for Fairfield to be paid attention to. And she actually invited Mr. San Romani and Mrs. Mathis, those are our two principals at Fairfield, to attend some principal meetings. And so he felt really rewarded by that because it showed that they were getting attention paid to them. The special education teacher, she said that one of her stories from this year that was the most rewarding was she has been working with a student to be able to read for 3 years, and this year he finally started to get it, and to see him do that and to see his excitement to know that he was reading was just a really awesome feeling. And then our paraprofessional, she said that one of her favorite things to see is when students start to get a task and they're not struggling with it as much anymore, that you can just see their confidence shoot up in that area. What is your advice for the supervision of all SPED staff? Our principal conducts weekly walkthroughs, and he said that really helps just when people don't know that you're going to walk into their classroom or be out in the hallway. You can really gauge whether people are doing their jobs and whether teachers are using their support staff appropriately. The special education teacher said that her advice is just to make sure that your expectations are known. She's had several new paras this year, and so she said that she just shows them what her expectations are on things or how she would like them to complete a task so that they have a baseline. And then the paraprofessional said one of her biggest things was that she wants people to actually use them, and then she wants paras to be where they're supposed to be, not sitting in the library or the commons area, which is not a problem now at Fairfield, but I can say that it has been a problem in the past, and our administration and special education teacher cracked down on that and said, hey, get in the classrooms, get to the students that you're supposed to be with. How do you work effectively with parents of special needs children? So all three of them, again, just said communicate, communicate, communicate. The parents are going to do so much better if they know what is going on. And so the principal said, just keep parents updated and just help them cut through the red tape. One of the parents that we have this year, he said that they do things where, sometimes that parent will bring in medications that her two children are on, and she cannot read the best. And so Mr. San Romani and our secretary in the office, they will help her read the medication and figure out how she is supposed to distribute it to that child, what times and whatnot. And it just makes her life easier. And so that's a little bit rewarding for him because it shows her that he cares not just about, how her son is doing on test scores, but just in life in general. The special education teacher said, good forms of communication and to just tell parents when the kids are doing something good, not just, what do we need to be working on? And then the paraprofessional said to let parents know if there are any things that they can do to help progress at home. She also has a child that is on an IEP, so she had some interesting perspectives, and she said she wants to know if there is something that her and her husband can be doing to help her son at home instead of just all of the work happening at school. How do you work with regular classroom teachers with special needs students? So once again, all three of them talked about the word communicate. Just have open doors of communication. The principal likes to do walkthroughs, as I have previously stated, because it just lets him know if the regular education teacher is using her support staff correctly, if the regular education classroom teacher is using support staff correctly, and if that teacher is, getting to the special needs students, differentiating work for them was another thing that he pointed out. The special education teacher said to just communicate. She likes to talk to us about what are we doing this week? What are we teaching this week? And, how are we teaching those methods? Because she went to school to be a special education teacher and we went to school to be regular education teachers. And so sometimes our teaching methods are different. And then the paraprofessional, her big story was, just be in the classroom as much as possible. She likes it when teachers keep the student in the classroom and allow the paraprofessional to be in there with them instead of just teaching the assignment and sending them out to complete it. Allow them to stay in the classroom and complete it there. What advice do you have for a first-year administrator? So my principal said some of his big things came from his childhood growing up. He said, to make sure that you let your special education teachers know that you have their back. He said that his mom did not always feel like, her principal had her back because she was hired through the co-op and not through that school personally. And so he said it doesn't matter, if they're hired through the co-op and they're placed at your school or if they are hired personally by your school. Let them know that you have their back and that you're going to support them. And then another big piece of advice, he said, don't forget about meetings and don't be afraid to end a meeting if a parent is not handling things professionally. They have a right for their voice to be heard, but if they're getting really, just demanding and rude and demeaning, to end that meeting. And he said he learned that himself this year through a particularly frustrating parent. The special education teacher said, don't micromanage, don't get too many things going on your plate at once, and let your expectations be known from the beginning and lead by example. And then the paraprofessional, she probably had my most likable advice, because she said things that I really want to aim to be like. She wants an administrator to be involved and be supportive and be present, be in the hallways, be in the classrooms, be at ball games, be at programs. Don't just only be seen in your office. And then another thing that she pointed out that I thought was super important was to know the special education program at your school, but then also how it works with the co-op, because every school and co-op program is going to be a little bit different, and you need to know both sides. What is the role of the special education teacher and principal? So all three of them, once again, said communicate. That was just kind of an overlying theme, which makes sense. Just communicate, communicate, communicate. And so the principal said, just to keep the communication clear and consistent. Talk throughout the year. Don't just talk a whole bunch at the beginning and talk a whole bunch at the end. Talk consistently throughout the year and back each other up. You're both going to have different takes on a student, and so back each other up and talk about, what the progress is or what the situation was. The special education teacher said, she likes to be notified when there is a problem, because she might know that student a little bit better than the principal does, because she works with, our special education students more closely than our principal does. And then the paraprofessional said that she likes to see an open door policy, to just know that she can walk into the principal's office if there is an issue, and that the principal will take time to meet with her and listen to her concerns. What characteristics do you seek in aspiring administrators in regards to special education? So the principal said you have to have passion for the kids, and you need to have a base foundation of SPED terminology, procedures, and the regulations. And then he talked about, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to say, I don't really know what's going on. He said that he has went and talked to our special education teacher a lot this year about, just terminology or rules and regulations and how they apply to our students that we have on IEPs. And so he said, don't try to just bluff your way through something, because you're going to lose your validity through a situation, and he said you're going to end up looking foolish to the parents and the regular classroom teacher and the special education teacher. And then the special education teacher said she would like to have an administrator that is level-headed and calm, somebody that knows special education laws, and then somebody who is involved with special education problems. And then once again, like I said on the previous slide, involves her when problems arise if it is a student who has been identified, such as one with an IEP. And then the paraprofessional said that what she likes to see in an administrator is great communication skills, supportive of students and staff, and then to be a voice, be an advocate for those students and the parents and the school that need it. And then once again, to be present at activities. So I was thinking about, how all of this was going to apply to me. What do I need to work on? What does my future look like? And so with special education, once again, I need to brush up on the terminology. I need to know what the rules and regulations are at my school as well as with our co-op. And so that's something that, has been brought to my attention through previous assignments and through this assignment, that if I want to be effective, I need to brush up on my special education terminology and knowledge. And then for leadership and supervision, I think I'm going to, just touch base on what all three people said. Have open communication. Let people know what your expectations are. Be present at things. That's something that I already do as a teacher. I'm present at so many school events because of the coaching and stuff that I do, and I attend a lot just as, a fan. And so that's something that I want to continue doing, is just to be present and let people know that I'm an advocate for the students and the staff and just the school that I'm at in general. So thank you for watching.